Hi everyone, welcome back to our Books at Bedtime session here at Ashbourne Library. We're going to be reading the next two chapters of the book we started earlier. This is called My Brother's Famous Bottom. It's by Jeremy Strong and it's published by Puffin Books. So we're going to read the next two chapters now. Chapter 5, Nuisance Neighbours. We're going to be on telly. Mum got a phone call yesterday from the local TV station. They'd heard all about it in the mini farm. They wanted to come and do a bit of filming. Dad's gone even more stupid than ever. We're going to be big stars, he said at breakfast this morning. It's only local TV, Mum pointed out, not Hollywood. You've no ambition, Dad answered. And you have no sense, laughed Mum. I could be an all-out action hero in the next fantastic episode of Star Wars Part 3005, The Phantom Welly Eater from Planet Goat. Mum almost choked on her muesli and sprayed bits across the table. That is so disgusting, muttered Dad. Isn't that disgusting, Cheese? Do you see your mother? She's a worse eater than either of you two. Splurg, went Tomato, and her breakfast went twice as far. You've been practising, haven't you? Said Dad, dabbing the table with the cloth. Mam had just about got her breath back. You, an action hero. You do know what an action hero does, don't you? They do action, lots of it. I bet you can't even do 5 press-ups. Ha! No problem. Dad threw himself on the floor. 1, 2, 3. Get off, Cheese. Get off my back. Horsey, yelled Cheese, hitting Dad in the head with a cereal bowl. Now there's a real action hero, laughed Mam. Thank you, said Dad, getting back in his chair. I meant James, Mam replied. But Dad seemed to have drifted off into a dream. I wonder how that TV news team found out about us. And I'll tell you something, that Martian next door is going to be really fed up when he sees us all on television. So this afternoon, the telly people turned up on the doorstep. A cameraman, a soundman, and a reporter. Tasman Plank, she said, shaking Dad's hand. He was wearing dark shades, and he left his shirt half unbuttoned. Johnny Depp, said Dad. Depp, I murmured. Johnny Depp. Cool, nodded Dad. I know. He turned to the weary camera and smiled. Call myself Dip sometimes to confuse the fans, he said. You certainly confused me, said Tamsin. I was told there's a mini farm here. There is, sighed Mam. Would you like to come through? Please ignore my husband. He's an idiot. I am not. Mum turned back to the reporter. How did you find out about our farm? Your neighbour, Mr. Tugg, he told us. We're doing a programme about nuisance neighbours. People who grow their hedges too tall. People with noisy dogs that are always barking. That sort of thing. Well, Mr. Tugg rang us and reported you. Dad nearly had a blue fit. He certainly did an amazing good impression of Mr. Tugg exploding. He what? That mealy-mouthed, manky Martian. He's the one who should be reported. We just like to film the farm, explained Tasman. I'll show Mr. Caterpillar Face. You can certainly film out there. We've nothing to hide. Absolutely nothing. Could you just give me 5 minutes to get rid of the goat poo? Poo, yelled Cheese, crawling out from behind Mum's armchair with nothing on. He means boo, Mum explained. He likes playing boo. He's... Goodness, there are 2 of them, cried Tasman. 2 poo, gurgled Tomato, appearing from behind Dad's armchair. We saw the results on the evening news. It wasn't too bad, except that the cameras had filmed Dad calling Mr. Tugg names and Rubbish tried to eat Tasman's microphone, and they showed Cheese crawling about and looking like one of the farm animals. There was also a rather odd notice written in big letters on the side of the shed. It read, Martians go home. As soon as the programme finished, Dad looked at Mum and me. Stand by for Martian invasion, he predicted. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, bang, bang, bang. I know you're in there, yelled Mr. Tugg from outside the front door. I'm not a manky Martian. How dare you call me Mr. Caterpillar Face, you big baboon? Dad rushed to the door, crouched down by the letterbox, and he shouted through it, I am not a baboon. Mr. Tugg crouched down on the other side, and soon they were at it hammer and tongs, yelling insults to each other. Then Mr. Tugg tried to poke Dad through the letterbox with a stick. Dad grabbed an umbrella and pushed that out. Ow! Yelled Mr. Tugg. That's grievous bodily harm, that is. You started it, you stick Martian. Suddenly Mr. Tugg's hand and half his arm came through the letterbox and grabbed Dad's nose. Let go! Bellowed Dad. The twins started crying, and that was just too much for Mam. She pulled Dad away from the door and wrenched it open, which brought Mr. Tugg flying into the room with his arm still stuck through the letterbox. He twisted his head to look up at her. "Good evening," he said. "Good evening, Mr. Tugg. I suggest you go back home. When the pair of you are calm enough to speak politely to each other, we might be able to sort this out." Mr. Tugg growled and went back to his house, while Mum tore a strip or two off Dad. She told him he was childish and he was deliberately winding up Mr. Tugg. "It's his own fault," complained Dad. "He makes life difficult for everyone. All I'm trying to do is feed my family." "I know," sighed Mam. "You're the perfect father." Dad shot a look at her. Did Mam really mean that? Or was she being sarcastic? Could Dad tell the difference? No, but I could. Chapter 6. Disaster. Big disaster today. It started with a telephone call from Granny to say that the yogurt was ready for collection. I thought she was going to bring it around in the sidecar on the motorbike, but Granny said she didn't want to jiggle it about too much. She said I should wheel the twins' double buggy around and we could strap the tub into that. "You've got time to nip around, haven't you, Nicholas?" said Mum. "I was going to play on my computer," I said. "You can do that afterwards," Mum told me. "The yogurt is much more important." So I grabbed the double buggy and I went round to Gran's. It's not far, but you have to go all the way down the high street, which is a bit of a nuisance when you're pushing an extra wide baby buggy. People get cross and scowl and shout at you. When I got to Gran's, she was waiting at the gate, peering down the road. "I thought you'd never get here," she said. "Is something the matter?" I asked. No, she protested. "I was worried about you, that's all. Come on, let's get the tub into the pushchair." The plastic tub was pretty big. Lancelot said that he'd used it for making beer before, but it was ideal for the yogurt. He was sealing the lid with some heavy-duty sticky tape. "We don't want it slopping over the top," he said. "It smells a lot, doesn't it?" I sniffed. Lancelot and Granny glanced at each other. I thought Lancelot looked a bit worried, but Granny smiled and said that the goat's yogurt always smelled like that in the early stages. "It'll wear off," she added. "Is that lid on tightly, Lancelot?" "It is." "Good. Let's get into the buggy then. It's heavy, isn't it?" It was too. The tub seemed to weigh a ton, even with the three of us lifting it, but we managed to get into the buggy eventually. Lancelot got the tape and it strapped the tub to the sides. "There, that should do the trick. Okay, Nick, you can take it away now." I set off back to my house. The buggy was pretty heavy and even more difficult to steer, so it was hard work returning along the high street. Everyone seemed to get in the way, or I got in the way of them. Then I almost ran Mr. Tugg over. He eyed me suspiciously. "Do watch where you're going." "Sorry, Mr. Tugg." He looked at the tub and asked what was in it. I told him. "Now I've heard everything," he said. "Yogurt, you'll be careful, Sonny. You don't want to end up like your dad. He's a lunatic, you know." I gave him a weak smile. What else could I do? In any case, I was a bit worried about the tub because it seemed to me that it was beginning to bulge for some reason. Then the lid began to lift up and down, and rather pungy gases escaped from beneath it. Mr. Tugg pulled a face and backed away. I thought it might be better if I got off the pavement and pushed the buggy down the side of the road. Hardly had I got the buggy off the curb when, badoom! The whole thing blew up. The lid went spinning high into the air and the great geyser of yogurts went whooshing up into the sky and then came slopping back down. Slap, slap, slosh. Oh dear, cars were covered, people were covered, I was covered, Mr. Tugg was covered. There was only one thing for it. I grabbed the handle of the buggy and I raced for home before anyone had the time to recover from the shock. I hurled myself up the garden path and into the house. "How's the yogurt?" shouted Mum from the kitchen. "I've just delivered it all," I squeaked and headed for the bathroom to clean up. Of course, it wasn't long before there was a thunderous knock on the door. The whole house shook. I crept to the top of the stairs and I peered down. Mr. Tugg was on the doorstep. You should have seen him. He was plastered from head to foot with goat yogurt. It was still dribbling from his nose. "Hello, Mr. Tugg," said Mum evenly. "Has Mrs. Tugg been giving you an aromatherapy session?" He was speechless. Tomato crawled between Mum's legs. Took one look at Mr. Tugg and burst into tears. "Bad goo," she sobbed. Mum picked her up and comforted her. "I think you'd better go home, Mr. Tugg. You're frightening the children. Goodbye." She shut the door, turned around and looked up at me. "Mr. Tugg appears to be covered in yogurt," she said. "Any ideas how that might have happened, Nicholas?" I told her everything. What is it about this family side, ma'am? Everything we do goes wrong. Oh well, I don't suppose we've heard the last of this.